6:30. I'm going to call the meeting to order in a festive way, and because of this gavel. And I will do a roll call of the members, which I'm going to try really hard not to forget somebody's name today. Jack Scarborough, Bonnie Sears, Bridget Powers, myself, Rebecca Hansen, John Ranlett, Chris Buckley, Marianne Barnsley, and Brian Murphy. Yes. And Steve Whitman is not joining us tonight, but he doesn't necessarily need to be excused because he is, well, we'll excuse him anyway. First up, we need to complete our review of our minutes from November 15th. We had a question about on the second page, the fourth bullet, sorry, the second bullet, and then the fourth bullet under that. So the question was that, well, whether or not Chris questioned, it says Mr. Buckley questioned whether regional impact would even be considered if this was the Irving station, referencing the difference in square footage. We have distributed the transcripts from those sections, both the section of when we were questioning the minutes and the section from November 15th. Chris, did you read through that and determine if there is a better way to phrase that?
I wondered if we could, just to clarify where I was coming from, what I was trying to establish at that meeting for the public was that we were giving due diligence. It wasn't just a capricious decision we were making on the regional impact statement. So I was trying to differentiate between, like, why did the Irving station, for instance, not need that, and this place did, the Market Basket did. So I thought that was an important point.
I feel like that came out in this, like I'm understanding that in that point myself. What does everyone else think? But if there's something you want to add in there.
And once again, that it took me a while to reread this and try to figure out what was.
I mean, we could add a second bullet because I think I did address that as a question. We could add a second bullet after that that said that that I replied that yes, there's the difference between the two proposals is about 4,000 feet and almost 70,000 feet, and the different. I mean, exactly what I said. The increase in pervious surfaces is pretty significant. So, do we want to just add that? My response to that as a bullet, would that
would certainly
help?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, sure.
What does everyone else think?
I think it's a good idea to reflect it in the minutes concretely.
So the reply from page 2 of the transcript.
Yep, the one that says
Include that.
Yep, Rebecca Hansen replies that it is 4,000 square feet versus blah, 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 and put that in as a second bullet after, or a bullet after the bullet point in question. Thank you for putting this
Yes, you're welcome.
I was worried that you guys were gonna have to watch the whole thing again.
That's a bad thing.
Yeah, I mean, I do get comments from time to time that people are like, I see you on TV. People that don't live in town. So. All right, so with that, I think we're ready to maybe entertain a motion about approving these minutes as amended.
I make a motion to approve as amended.
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
I'm abstaining because I still wasn't here that night.
Still.
Okay. Minutes are approved. All right, next up is a review of the minutes from our work session and public hearing on December 6th. I have a few comments. If everyone's okay, I'll just start in right with those. It says under number 3, continued review of the minutes. Right after it says Bonnie Sears is recused and Steve Whitman was placed as a full member. I think we can strike the Bonnie Sears is recused because it does say under the site plan approval that she recused herself as an abutter, and I think that's a more important place. And I would like to put under the roll call of members that Steve Whitman was placed as a
Seated member.
Yep.
And I was there.
And then under the site plan approval, the first bullet where it does say Ms. Sears recused herself as an abutter, our alternate Whitman is seated. I think we should strike it from that place because I wanted to make sure that it's reflected that he was seated as a member at the beginning of the meeting. And my last comments are on the top of the second page, below those first two bullet points is a paragraph. I remind the members of the board that at the last meeting, they voted that this project is a development of regional impact. I would like, if it works for everybody else, that we voted that the project is a possible development of regional impact. And then just a clarification that the town of Warren wasn't on the distribution of notification list or something like that. And just to clarify what list we were talking about. Comments from everyone else?
Make a motion to approve the minutes as amended.
Amendment here, under the administrative matters. At the very end, all were in favor of Rebecca signing this document should actually be under the presentation of this special use permit.
Okay. Yep.
Or it could, I mean, it says all in favor up there, but,
Yeah, I think it makes sense to put it under the
okay.
bullet point, or the number 1 up there. All were in favor, and then, yeah, I agree. Also, I would like to point out that under number 2 of that page, it says there was a discussion, and I just, that's great. Anyway, okay.
Well, there was.
I mean, there was. I just like that that's the only place where it says there was a discussion.
Right.
I mean, that could be our entire minutes.
Right.
Right.
There was some discussion.
People talk.
Okay, so maybe we should make the motion again of, just in case,
I
because,
make the motion that we accept the minutes as amended.
Second.
all right, so all those in favor of approving these minutes as amended signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, abstain? Okay,
I abstained, I wasn't here.
thank you. Paper shuffle, and then, okay, so we have 2 public hearings, applications before us this evening. Just want to remind our applicants in the audience, like some of you, I guess, have been here before and maybe know the procedure, but that we will invite each applicant up one at a time to make a brief presentation about the completeness of their application and give us any details that might help us understand the application. Then we will vote as a board on the completion of the project. At that point, the board can ask more questions, and then we'll open it up for a public hearing. We'll invite anybody to come and speak about the application. After we close the public hearing, we'll then bring it back to the board, make a discussion, and there will be discussion, and then we will make a ruling. So the first one is a request by Justin Benoit, apologies if I messed up your name, applicant for site plan approval of a virtual reality arcade and a frozen yogurt sales in an existing mercantile space at 89 Main Street, PID number 109-040 in the Village Commercial Zone. We have a representative from this applicant. All right, come on up to the podium and please present your project.
Good evening. I have a couple extra leaves. If I know they're small, I just don't have any. They were included. But as it said, we're looking to open a virtual reality arcade and frozen yogurt sales right downtown where the old book exchange is. Will not need much construction at all. This is the current floor plan as it stands now. And all we're looking to add are, looking to build 6 rooms, which will hold the VR booths. And that's gonna have the full VR setup for people to use. We want it to be 8 by 8 on the inside. So we're doing 10 by 11 rooms with a foot to hold the computer, all that we need. The room for the froyo dispensers as well as the counter. The back half of the location, we're not going to be needing really any construction other than revamping the bathrooms, new toilets, things like that. It's pretty much all the construction that we're going to be needing, and that's it.
Thank you. If you could just remain where you are for in case we have questions, that would be great. So I did see one question about that this was, there's a lot of things in the application that weren't checked. And Brian, do you want to just summarize that for the rest of the board? So,
Okay, we had informal discussions in the past about site plan review and how they apply to all applicants. As we're all very well aware, a market basket site plan review is a whole different kettle of fish than what Mr. Benoit is presenting here tonight. It was just essentially reuse of already, well, it's vacant space, merchant space. It was designed as a bookstore, I think. No, actually, it was Newberry's back in the past, as I recall. Then it became a bookstore, and, it's typical evolution of buildings in a downtown area. I think that the board might want, and it's certainly up to them, to have an application that reflects that kind of request versus building on the bare ground. The engineering stuff that's required as far as the checklists. I mean, this is a one-size-fits-all application. And Justin, did it to suit his particular project, which I think fit the bill. If the board wants to require all the rest of the stuff for something as minor than this, they certainly may, but I think that it would do the public a better service to have something that shows that, this isn't quite the impactive thing that a new building would be. There's no drainage calculations for example. And, it would be ridiculous to request something like that, or even to have it on an application of this type. So it's almost like built environment versus unbuilt, and we should probably make the distinction for that. Or we can continue using this form, recognizing that the requests are different.
yep. I just wanted to make sure we hear that at the point where we're discussing the completeness of the application, because we need to decide if we do find this application complete, or do we need these things that we would typically ask from other site plan review. So, so with that, any specific questions for the applicant while he's standing there, or we can have a discussion about the completeness of this application?
Well, I did have a question.
Yeah.
I don't know if it has anything to do with whether you can do this or not, but these are virtual reality, so that, what does that mean? I mean, is that like somebody can go in and say, go for a roller coaster ride without have to worry about dying or something, They could just have the thrill and not.
They're more like video games. So the booth would have like a full virtual reality headset that you can put on, and we'd have it 5 minutes, depending on how much you paid. And there's a lot of different games that we want to have on our list. So it would be more like similar to Xbox, PlayStation games, but it's more immersive, and you have controllers like you're standing up playing it.
Okay. Just wondered.
Yeah, no.
the right time for these kinds of questions?
Yeah, I was just gonna say,
All right.
let's talk about the complete, I think we can all ask a lot more questions about the nature of this type of business, but for now, I'd like to wrap up if we determine that this is a complete application, and then we can start asking further questions. So as a board, we can just make a motion and vote and say that this application is complete, but knowing what we have on our checklist, is there anything else that we would like to see that we're not seeing here that would say that this application is not complete?
I don't believe so.
Make a motion that it is complete.
Second.
Okay, so, all those in favor of accepting this application as complete, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay. The application is complete. And other questions from the board, if there's any that are fresh, and then I will, and then I'll open up for the public hearing. Bridget?
I'm wondering if you'll offer games that have age restrictions, and if so, how do you plan on adhering to those sorts of guidelines?
Yes. It's still something I'm not completely fixed on yet. But there are, we do want to offer, first-person shooter games, which obviously have a mature rating instead of a everyone rating. So we do want to follow that. As for how the system that we want to use to offer the games does have an option for that, to allow them or not allow them, and I'm still working out exactly how we're going to do that, the best way to follow those age restrictions. So to answer your question, we are going to, but we're still trying to figure out the minor details of that.
Occupancy of each booth, is it single, double?
Just single.
It's always single?
Yeah.
Can they link? I mean, could we be in adjacent booths playing the same game?
Not upon open. I want to do that eventually. Maybe use some of the space in the back as like a multiplayer area. But upon opening, it'll all be single.
The yogurt part of the operation, is that just for people who are playing these games? Or, is it also a yogurt, like a kind of yogurt shop, I guess, that people off the street could just buy frozen yogurt?
It's going to be both. So the frozen yogurt's open to anyone. There's no frozen yogurt shops anywhere in the area. So we definitely want to have that as an option for people. It's not just for the people that are doing the VR. It's kind of just, we offer both products.
You're not manufacturing the yogurt, you're not making it, it's just bought and you...
Yeah, it's, what is it, do you know? Remember off the top of your head? Nancy's. Yeah. So they offer, it comes pre-made. We have to do very little to put it together at the store, other than refrigeration, things like that.
Right, are you gonna have any kind of signs or whatever so that it shows, not the ingredients so much, or maybe, but, how many calories and
Yeah, nutritional
all this
info.
that everybody's gonna be
Yes.
interested in?
Yeah, we'll have all of that available for anyone who comes in.
Okay. All right.
So back to Brian's question, it's a single person in the booth, but are there also spectators? I mean, is there anything to spectate if you're not participating?
Not really. There's just the way that the virtual reality is right now. I mean, we could have a TV watching what they're seeing, but the experience is more being in it. So it's not really anything we have spectators for, right? that
So
we're thinking of.
obviously, my concern is young children accessing these violent images.
Yes, yes.
That's a concern of mine.
We definitely want to prevent a young child from playing anything that's mature rating, so we definitely will we'll be, have that kink worked out before we open.
So does that mean there's 3 VR rooms or 6?
We have 6, yeah, so it's 2 in each row.
And just in the 4 back rooms are bathrooms, or? they
So everything that's back here is pre-existing. There's a restroom here and a restroom here. These are all just like office spaces. The one on the left is the kitchen. They're already pre-built. They're going to be there, but we really won't be using them much, at least for now.
Do you have any way to monitor, or will you have any way to monitor what is ongoing in those rooms?
Yes, yeah, we, you mean in regards to like what they're doing on the headsets,
Yeah.
or just in the room?
What's going on in the room?
Going on in the room, yes, yeah, we'll be putting cameras in, so we'll be able to monitor.
So any age kids can come in? It isn't, is this basically more for adults, teenagers, or?
We're gonna be, our primary is gonna be like college-age students.
Okay,
For the
so
virtual reality.
wouldn't really be a lot of little kids coming in after school and,
Not that we can really imagine. I mean, very little kids, usually the headsets really don't even fit that well. But we really can't, I mean, unless it's parents coming in with their kids, really.
okay. Thank you.
So as far as monitoring, will there be someone designated just for that function? Will that be their job?
Not specifically just their job. I mean, we plan on monitoring them at the register at the desk while we're there. So anyone who's working will be able to monitor the cameras as they're working the counter.
Okay, so that's not their full-time job, though.
No.
Do you have anticipated hours of operation?
Yeah, we 2 to 9, Sunday through Thursday, and then 11 to 9 Friday, Saturday is what we wanted to do.
Other questions from the board? Okay, we'll have more opportunity to ask more questions. I'm going to open up for public hearing, and so anyone who's speaking will need to use the podium.
Yes.
And just to remind, if anyone is going to speak and they wish to ask questions of the applicant, those questions need to be directed through the board, through me, the chair. So it is 6:53, and I'm going to invite anyone who wishes to speak about this application to come up and state their name into the microphone at the podium, and then make their comments.
Frank Miller, and I'd like to, the entertainment, virtual reality entertainment application seems to be a good attraction to Main Street. I don't know how the food service or the frozen yogurt connection to virtual reality ties in there, but I guess the concern would be the number of employees and where they're going to park, and then obviously whether or not the food service or the frozen yogurt would expand into another food service offer and end up with a restaurant in there. And that's, but the virtual reality application portion, I think, is good use of the space. And so I stand in favor of the virtual reality application. Thank you.
Anyone else? All right, it is 6:55, and I am closing the public hearing. I can't remember, do I usually tap the gavel when I do that? I'm not sure. Okay, all right.
So festive.
Yeah, the festive gavel. Any other questions from the board? I would just maybe ask the applicant to maybe come back up and let us know how many employees they're gonna be, because employee parking can be a challenge in Plymouth.
As of right now, when we open, we will be starting with 2. We have 3 employee spots at the location. So as we grow and need more people, we, right now off the bat, can hire 1 more with employee parking. But from there, we'll need to work out employee parking for any more employees that we get.
And I would imagine with a kitchen that's about 10 feet wide, running some sort of restaurant out of there might be difficult, but
Yes.
They would have to come back here for
a change of use, for sure. So, any other questions from the board?
I have one. As far as the yogurt machine, is there any health permit or anything that's required?
We know that we will need to get a food service permit for the froyo part of it, which we are working on.
All right.
So the back sinks are all there, wash, sanitize, all that.
We will need to be putting in a larger sink. We need one that's big enough to fit the froyo basins from the machines, and the one that's in there isn't really that big. But other than that, everything else is all set.
Do you have an opening day?
We are hoping for the beginning of March.
All right. Any other comments, questions from the board, or perhaps some sort of motion?
I would like to make a motion that we will approve these plans for his
For the site plan review?
site plan review.
Second.
Yes.
All right. All those in favor of approving this site plan review?
Aye.
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 Aye. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, board.
Next up, Granite United Way and Bridge House Site Plan Review, expansion of use for a 2,483 square foot building comprised of 6 units of single occupancy, 1-bedroom, residential institutional housing and related living space at 258 Highland Street on PID number 105-007 in the industrial commercial development zone. This application is to reestablish a site plan approval, an expansion of use that was lost through the expiration of that approval granted in January of 2017. We have a representative? Okay. Would you like to come up? I think, how many of board members were here when this came through?
I was here.
So we've got a few of us, but I think we've got enough board members that, not to make you jump through too many hoops, but, sorry, too many more hoops. But if you don't mind just coming up and briefly giving us a presentation about your application.
I actually wasn't really prepared for this because I missed the deadline. That's why I'm here. However, this is 6 units that is in keeping with our mission to end homelessness. So these are vouchered, sort of a boarding house style. And what we've learned over many years of running a shelter is that very often people move into their own apartments, especially people who are older, become lonely and isolated, and they recidivate into homelessness. So this is one way that we think that we can end this for the number of people who will be, renting this space. This is a vouchered space, so all of each of these 6 rooms comes with a New Hampshire Housing Finance Authority voucher. And we have a community meal every night, so these folks will be welcome to join us. There's already a waiting list for people. John came down to the shelter the other night, and he said to me, "You're not running a shelter, you're running a nursing home." So we have a lot of older people, and so hopefully that this will solve that housing need for 10 years for whoever lives there, because the vouchers are good for 10 years.
All right. Any questions from the board regarding the completeness of this application?
Make a motion, we accept the application as
Second.
complete.
All those in favor of accepting this application as complete?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay. Any other questions from for the applicant about this project?
What's your next project, Kathy?
Well, I actually have one for opioid recovery, so stay tuned, more at 11. Thanks, Jack.
All right, if there's no other questions or comments from the board, I am going to use the gavel to open the public hearing at 7 o'clock. Would anyone like to speak about this project?
Brent Miller again, and of course, I support this wholeheartedly, as I have since we started it, and I think it should definitely be reapproved, and so we can move forward with the plan. Thank you.
Thanks, Frank. Anyone?
I would like to add that at the time of the inception of many of the homeless,
Can we hold this, if you're, sorry, Jack, I'm just trying to follow protocol. I'm going to close the public hearing unless you want to speak as a citizen.
I will speak as a citizen,
Okay.
if I can
We
speak
do that?
here.
Is that how that, or do we just, how does that work?
Well, they are citizens,
Yeah.
so
They're
you have the
citizens,
right
yeah.
to speak.
So
It's
just in case,
awkward.
Jack, why don't you just get up and speak at the
Yeah,
podium?
that's
and
the
then-
best. Separation.
Generally, that's what they do, ask them to do.
Okay, thank you. This hasn't happened before. Now I know. Sorry to make you move, Jack. but-
I left my cane back there.
Oh.
Bring it to you.
All I'd like to say is, from the inception of their entire project, I've been completely supportive, and they have thrown themselves into support of homeless veterans, of which there are, at the last count, I recognized 603 in the state of New Hampshire. This will be a benefit to those people. So I am supportive.
Thanks, Jack. Anyone else?
I do have a point that perhaps should be made.
Okay.
And not to cast anything in a negative light, but just purely from a procedural standpoint. It would appear that Jack has already made up his mind about the application, which is fine, as long as one doesn't speak of it. So I think just, and I hate to do this, because I understand where you're coming from, but this is purely just statutorily, perhaps he should abstain from the vote after making the statement, is all
I abstain.
just for cleanliness. Personally, I don't have an issue with it, but
Right.
there
I-
have been issues in the
yeah.
past with that.
So I think your voice was heard at the podium instead of
Yeah.
with your vote for
Right.
this instance. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
Any other comments from the public? And I'm willing to entertain more board members to go, but not,
Then we won't have a
but
vote.
please don't let us lose our quorum here. Yeah. All right, it is 7:04, and I am going to close the public hearing. Bring it back to the board. Any other questions for the applicant? Any other comments? I will just note that our site plan review regulations say that the approval is only good for 1 year, unless, and we do have the ability to issue extensions to that if we get a 30-day notice beforehand. And this is something that we will be digging into our site plan regulations at some point, and this is something that, thanks for indicating that maybe there's something we need to look at. So apologies for any inconvenience this has caused you, but we are just trying to go by what we have established as our regulation. So if you run into any other issues, please come see us, you know, in November. Yeah, yeah.
Okay. That's what I was gonna ask, when they were planning on starting.
All right, great. Questions, comments, motions from anyone other than Jack?
I guess my only, all we're trying to decide is whether or not to extend basically something we've already approved. Is that not the case?
No, this is actually a full site plan review.
Oh, it is?
Because we are almost 2 years from our last approval, so
Really? That was that
it's,
long?
it's, yeah. Yeah,
Somebody doesn't read her emails.
So, does any of us, do we know if anything has changed since then that would change the application?
I mean, the only thing that's changed is probably going to cost us a little more money. I'm already paying the bills for the architect, for the site review. We were supposed to close this January 20th, and then to start construction shortly thereafter. So there probably will be, there's a winter fee that is now encumbered us, so another $10,000. But we're starting, so. And there are no changes. It's the layout is exactly as it was. Any other questions? And all the money is in place. But as I said, if there's a government shutdown, who knows?
Make a motion, we accept the site plan and
approve the site plan.
approve it.
Second.
Can Jack second? Can Jack second?
I'll second.
Okay, just in case.
I'll do it.
All those in favor of approving this site plan review application signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed or abstaining?
Abstain.
Thank you, Jack. All right, it's approved. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. As a veteran, appreciate this, and these guys need it.
Thank you, Kathy. John.
I guess this comes to me. You have the expanded calendar, oops, thank you, Mary Ann, that shows all of the meetings for everybody in town and a lot of our application and notification deadlines. Also, you have, I believe, a standard schedule that we publish.
And you did give these out the last time. You actually, or somehow we got them.
I have them, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So,
I think, yeah, they come and go, but Don wanted to make sure.
Yeah, okay.
That we had it. There's that, there's the other thing that we probably would like to speak to, unless you want to do this under any other thing that you want to do, Madam Chair.
I'm hoping you're going to talk about the zoning stuff.
Yes, that was what I was leading
All right,
into.
awesome.
We did get some information from the town attorney tightening up the language in the site plan review regs, the subdivision regs, and adding a definition to the zoning ordinance. And some of that is internal to the board where you can do that as far as the site plan review and the other things that are pertinent to this. And then we would need an amendment to the zoning ordinance and add the definition of wetlands in there as well. I looked around to some of the other towns. Did I send you guys an
Yes.
email? with
Yep.
that? Okay, I couldn't find it. I was gonna copy off the stuff. I can't even find the original document. So anyway, you could see, I just kind of went to anybody that had, locally, pretty much Ashland, see what they had to say, Holderness, Campton. Some were silent on a definition of wetland. Some They didn't broaden it anymore, and I think the best, simplest is the one that DES has, where it's 3 bullets. You know, it talks about soils and botany, and I forget what the third point is. It might be flood situations or hydrology of some sort. You know, because that, if it works for DES, and the other way we could do this too is if we linked our definition to whatever is the current definition in their rules, we would never have to update it in the future if we were going to stick with what the state had to say. We did the same thing with the building code. We just adopted by reference the state building code. So if we adopted this by reference, you know, this is the current definition, and that, you know, make an indication there that it would, you know, in perpetuity adopted by reference back to the state RSA, where those definitions come from.
So a couple of things. The first is, what is, and I'm probably going to ask this every time we meet, unless I can remember to write it down, our first public hearing for,
I didn't bring my calendar with me. It's soon.
okay. So we need attorney review of the language.
Correct.
Before our next work
Yes.
session. Okay. So,
And that's for the ones that are going before the voters.
right, and so I think for now, site plan review regs and the subdivision regs, we can change those internally.
I believe so, yes.
With a public hearing, is
Correct.
what it says in, I mean, assuming, because that's what it says in each of these, that these were adopted
Right.
by the planning board after a public hearing. So we can, so I'd like to not worry about those right now, because I think there is some review that needs to happen, whether we need minor or major review and editing of those. I think we need to determine when we're gonna look at those at our first work session in January. And then I'd just like to say that the definitions from that you sent along in that email, most of them are straight out of the planner definition handbook. Does everyone has everyone seen that? Maybe I'll send that back around. Steve circulated a planner dictionary,
Okay.
which has examples of, so there were maybe 3 or 4 examples of wetlands definitions in this and they're pulled out of actual ordinances from communities all around the country. And 2 of the examples that you sent along were actually straight out of there.
Oh, were they? Okay.
Yeah, and the one thing I don't like about them, although they are classic wetland, I'm looking at my phone because I took a picture of it off my computer screen. So we'll see if I can actually look at it. Is it doesn't cover vernal pools. So hydric soils and vegetation often doesn't cover vernal pools, which isn't, I don't think we have a lot of time to really make a full edit right now. The email that was from John Radigan, right? It said we could either write our own definition. I do like the idea of referencing the state, but then he also said we can use the language directly out of the definition in the subdivision regs. Wetlands means lands containing soils that are hydric, including freshwater and saltwater marshes. You know, for all those saltwater marshes we have here in Plymouth, as defined by the National Cooperative Soil Survey, or further defined by high-intensity soil maps for New Hampshire. Or we could, or just reference the current state definition for wetlands.
I think the important thing would be that all our definitions align,
Right.
no matter when. So you could proffer the new definition for the zoning ordinance, and then we take up rewriting or editing our regulations.
Yep.
Put it straight in there at
Yep.
that point.
So I think those 2 options are either getting it like the site plan review, the subdivision regs, which sounds like a very dated definition of wetlands to me, or linking it to the DES wetlands definition, mostly because I don't think we have the knowledge and ability to actually create a wetlands definition in the course of this meeting. So, do you have the state definition? It's basically hydric soils, vegetation.
That was the document that I couldn't
indicates, and
find
then-
after I
okay.
sent it out.
Okay.
But, yeah, if you could email it back to me, any one of you, I'll make sure that it gets back.
All right.
But like I said, that I just went to, nh.gov and DES and,
Okay.
asked them for the definition, and boom, it was right there and bulleted.
So we need to have this decided before we leave tonight, basically, or, because we need to have the definition ready to go by January 3rd.
Yes.
Okay. Let's see if I can try and open it.
I think I can.
Stand by.
You sent two things, didn't you?
I think it's in the late breaking docs one.
Yes, got it.
It's like a race of whose phone works faster.
I couldn't open the one on the left. I have
couldn't either. I don't-
wetlands. This is town of Peterborough.
Oh, those were the ones that were sent by Radigan. I had sent mine out
Yours is separate.
previous to that, I
Okay.
believe.
I don't know if I have the other
Yeah,
one.
I don't, what I got from you, there were two attachments, and one was.
This would have been last week or the week before.
Oh, okay, I don't recall that.
Okay, so it just disappeared into cyberspace. But I'll go on the web tomorrow morning and grab that and make sure you get it straight from there. And like I said, it's very terse, which is what we would like in a zoning ordinance. I mean, the more ambiguity that's built in, the worse product we'll get out of it at the end.
Yeah, so I guess we need to figure out now, so I'm gonna see if we can, it would be nice to know what that definition is, instead of, unless we're comfortable saying we can defer to the state on this, for a definition of wetlands. And then we'll have to look that up, it's just we don't have the opportunity to have a discussion about that after.
Right.
Or between now and when we need to, we just need basically our town attorney will review any zoning amendment language to make sure that it is tight legally, so.
Seems like if we're gonna have to agree to something, we should know what we're agreeing to.
Yeah.
January 3rd is the work session.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that, but we don't know the schedule when we're, the public hearing, but
I can get it in 2 seconds if you want.
could you?
Oh, you mean what's on the
When-
docket?
When we had the schedule, so we went back from town meeting back to when we're having our 2 public hearings, and we wanted to make sure we have the review time, so.
So no Conservation Commission on this? Yeah. Which probably is, it was probably not submitted or something, but it is the third Tuesday of every month.
Probably just the planning and select board and zoning, probably the only ones that are on there.
There actually is a little bit of grace.
Okay, good.
It's Thursday, January 10th. This is the last day to post and publish notice of the first public hearing.
And does the language have to be there in the, or can we,
It should be close, but it's being public hearing, it's amenable
okay,
between the two. So whatever language is voted on at that meeting will be the one that will be sent to the attorney.
okay. So all right, so did we decide we were going to, our public hearings are in the 2 in February? Or the last, I can't.
No, the last day to hold the first public hearing is Monday, January 21st.
Okay, so we are having our first,
And I believe we have one scheduled.
so zoning amendment on the 17th.
Yes.
And then again on the,
Would be the first work session,
okay,
which is January 3rd, or
or February 7th.
February 7th, I'm
Okay.
sorry.
which looks like we
but
have a
that's-
public budget hearing if needed at 6 PM. So, maybe some competition for this space.
Generally, we don't go to the second night on the budget hearing, and I don't think there's anything of any consequence, any great changes. They'll put those out. And generally, one night
Okay.
we
good to
go
know.
through.
Okay,
Looks like we're going to have to schedule a public hearing. We have a session on the 17th. Oh, unless we have one application so far, and the deadline closes on the 27th.
so for the 17th,
Yes,
okay.
that would be the only scheduled date that we have that we could hold that public hearing.
Okay. And so you're saying we're gonna have to notice the public hearing for the one on the 7th?
No, for the 17th is what we'd have to do, because the last day to hold is the 21st. We have a scheduled regular meeting on the 17th.
Yep.
There's one application so far, and it's a subdivision, it's a minor subdivision.
Okay,
So I think there's time in that meeting. And of course, I won't know until the 27th. But it looks like right now, I mean, this is typically the slow period,
yep.
that would be the best date to hold. the
Okay, I thought we had
first
decided on the dates specifically already, and I'm wondering if it's in the minutes from. All right, so this is from our minutes. The Chair and Vice Board needs to hold the first public meeting by January 17th. So as we say, we're gonna hold our first public meeting on the 17th.
Yeah.
So, and then the continued hearing will take place on February 5th.
Right.
That seems weird. I think, well, we probably should have caught that in the minutes when we reviewed them. My guess is it means the 7th?
Yeah, I mean, those, we got conflicting calendars. One is this one, and the other is our schedule calendar.
Right. So
So-
I guess I'm just trying to figure out what we had decided we were gonna do, so so I think what we meant to do was the first, we need to have two public hearings. The first one for the zoning amendments. The first one we were gonna do on January 17th. And the second one we were gonna do on February 7th.
Yes.
Okay.
But we just have to let people know when it is. The last day to post and publish notice is January 24th, but it doesn't say when the only problem I see with that comes in on Tuesday, February 5th, is the last day for official copy of final proposal to adopt or amend to be placed on file at the town clerk's office, which is before our scheduled work session on the 7th.
Okay, so we might.
However, if there's no amendments proffered by either the public or the board at the first public hearing, there's no need to hold the second hearing.
Okay. But we have amendments.
No, I mean, you present the
Surprise,
amendments
okay.
to the public. If they say, go for it,
Okay,
you don't need to hold another meeting.
okay.
I mean, it's only when there's changes in the language, because it has to be worked on between them and then represented at a
Okay.
public hearing.
And we have a couple weeks to play with, so if we have to do it before the 7th, we could probably do an additional public hearing if necessary in between those two dates.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we could go the fourth Thursday.
Yep. Or the 5th, Thursday,
We have 5 this time?
5 in January.
Wow.
Yep. All right, so, before our next work session on January 3rd, as long as we're good with our other zoning amendments, if anyone finds a wetlands definition that they really like, bring it to the board. I'll dig up the DES current definition. Sorry. Okay. Anything else from you, Brian?
No, that's pretty much it on my end.
Another reminder that on January 3rd is when we'll have our yearly work plan session, when we're gonna outline, we're gonna take all our work sessions for each month and try and come up with a loose plan for what we wanna cover. So now's a good time to review the master plan and remember what it is that we had said we were planning on doing in the next 10 years. Other good things to look at are the subdivision regs, the site plan regs, the zoning. And then I also wanted to sort of talk about all the materials that we have at our disposal, and the reference materials that I think are helpful for us in doing our jobs up here. So, yeah, so just want to make sure everyone has the materials that we talk about, so.
When will the master plan be on the website?
It may very well be there right now. I sent it up yesterday or the day before, and I talked to Jules today.
Okay.
And the, all the supporting documentation, the data book will be up there.
Right, I gotta just dig it out. I mean, I got piles of revisions.
I have it if you want me to resend it. so.
That would be great. That would be great.
I would-
And you may have already done that, but
Yeah, and
Do
it's
it
actually
again.
they should, that has not changed since it went up with the drafts before our hearings.
Okay.
So it's the same stuff.
what was it titled, do you recall? I'll look at all the ones, because I took all the emails and attachments and docs and threw them into a folder, so I can just go through it by date on that, too.
And then the other thing, Brian, is, it'd be nice if we can get the planning board members, the list with the, term expirations and stuff. The one I have is from 2017.
Okay.
Just as we get close to town meetings, so we can,
Sure.
we'll have to vote on officers and just remind people who has, because I think there are some people that have, terms that are expiring coming up. So,
Okay, I'll email that out. I'll get it from Dawn. We have it downstairs.
great, thank you.
Actually, no, I don't have it here.
I just have one from a couple years ago that we pushed so much paper through here that I've probably thrown out 3 copies of it already, so.
So I have a question. I'm not sure. I want to ask about the appropriateness of my questions regarding the monitoring of the virtual reality. Is that in the scope of the site review process, or is that, I mean, are we the regulatory people who are concerned with that, or is there, how does that work?
In a manner of speaking, I mean, I don't know if you're directing this to me or the chair.
I don't know who,
Okay.
it's just a general question based on my newness and ignorance.
It's a potential effect of this. You know, I'm glad you brought it up, to be honest with you. Because, and it was pretty obvious that we know nothing about what he's talking, you know, until he explained it to us. So those questions, I mean, that was why I asked how many occupants would be in there. You know, Bonnie, I believe you asked whether it was individual or if
Right.
it was, you know, a group thing. And certainly, you know, if they have a rating system for that, and, you know, it spoke to the due diligence that the applicant gave, because he had already considered that.
Right, but with no evidence of, no plan, no, you know,
Right,
and,
right.
and I get to the point where I feel a little uncomfortable denying him the opportunity to do his business.
Right.
But I don't feel comfortable with the answer, well, I'm not quite sure how I'm gonna handle that, because I think it's a serious concern.
He
And I-
did seem to think that it's gonna be mostly for college.
But he
That
didn't
doesn't
rule
mean-
out.
Right.
he
But
did
that doesn't
not
mean
rule
somebody
out-
else won't be
That doesn't
sneaking
mean when
in.
you're open at 3 in
It's
the
not even
afternoon
sneaking,
when
it's open to the
school
public.
gets out.
Maybe
that-
what we should have done is made that age
Contingency.
classification as a condition of approval.
And that, I think, is Bridget's question, could we do that?
Right.
Yeah. Well, I think in, where you have videos and games and stuff, I think we have to, because, I think that's a lot of problems.
It's not a
today
reach,
that
I
some-
don't think, to ask that question. It's just that
Can we,
it's new because nobody's presented something like this before.
can we
So
put it in
was
the
a good
context of
catch.
like a movie theater? So say a new
Right.
movie theater was coming in. What would we do? Would we ask, just trying to put it in context of a business that maybe, we've all been to the movie theater, so we understand that a little better. Would we ask that application, how are you going to make sure that you don't have people under the age of 17 going to NC-17? Is that what it is? I don't even know what the rating is. And if they didn't have a solid answer for that yet, would that be a reason to not approve them?
They would have a solid answer for that, though, because that's established, we have a rating system, and they don't, they know they follow certain rules, and those are probably legal rules.
I would think so.
This basically, what threw us off as a board, I think, what he was talking about is a video arcade. It's virtual reality, but it's a video arcade. It's video games. So I think if we think of it in those terms, it's a little bit easier for us to understand, what the business is. And I don't know how much regulation there is, like with a.
Well, I think they are rated
Right, they are,
Yes.
you're
Oh,
right.
yeah, there's
explicitly.
there's a lot of
But-
them that are.
It's the perfect babysitter. If you're not gonna be home till 5 o'clock and your 11-year-old needs a place to be, and kids love that.
I know.
And it's bad for them.
I would kind of imagine that it would be absorbed into the way they do it in the movies, however they administer that legally. If you're giving a public presentation of a rated product, I think that you have to be held to the standards of viewership for that rated product. Otherwise, it's probably a licensing thing. You can imagine the entanglements. I don't think there's a police powers thing on the books that say, you're going away if you let a PG-13 person into an R-rated movie. But there's probably some kind of an economic thing, and it might even be pressure that you get caught with this and suddenly you're cut off from the source of the movies. Because it's a weird business, you don't own the movie, you get it through whatever service or affiliation you have. But somebody's going to be on the hook to make sure that those audiences are appropriate to what's being shown.
Is it though a legal requirement, or is it a guideline that's put forth by the movie that says you should be of a certain age to watch this movie?
I'd have to believe it was a legal requirement because they can actually bar people from coming in. And if it wasn't, then somebody would have challenged it on constitutional grounds at this point, I believe.
And I can't imagine like an adult movie theater wouldn't get in trouble for
Right.
letting in someone, and I also think that if someone, and this is maybe a zoning issue, but if someone proposed like an adult video, I don't know if they even have things like that anymore, but what we used to call peep shows or something.
We have those, it's in our table of uses.
Yeah, so those things are zoned out of our community, right?
Right.
Not out, but I think they require
They're
certain.
pushed out to the ag zone.
Yeah,
Seriously.
You can start one at your house.
Yeah, there you go, Chris.
Worse than that is our neighbor could start.
What happens in the country stays
Right.
yeah. So much for that envelope factory.
I can get more information from Justin on that if you guys like and record
Because
that.
Well, I just, I think it's I don't know how it works, and I don't
Yep.
know who's monitoring that. And if nobody's monitoring that, are we just gonna,
And I think
offer up
that's-
our
I
kids.
think that's
It's right next
something-
door to PYC as well.
That's true, that's a good point.
See, that's what a lot of parents have done, because there are a lot of kids that have been exposed to some of these that they never should have.
Amen,
And
brother.
it desensitizes them completely.
It does.
You know?
It strips them of their ability to have compassion.
Exactly.
So does public television.
A lot of it does. A lot of it does. And where, our parents would have known where we were in the afternoon.
Oh, yes.
It's different.
Unfortunately, we've allowed the computers and the videos to babysit our children. And, one guy's kids got one and they won't know, they're not monitoring, they're not looking at it, so here, I'll bring this over and, you think they're doing one thing but, I think we could couldn't we check with the chief and see on that?
Yeah, I'll ask Steve if there's any police stuff that they would, if there is, if he has authority over something like that.
Yeah.
That would be interesting. I also wonder what kind of things we can do as a planning board. I'd be happy to reach out to the Lakes Region Planning Commission, or if our rep, is that you, are you the rep for that? Or is it
I'm
Brian?
one of them, Brian's on it too.
I meet with them on a monthly basis, so, right now for a totally separate project, but I do have easy access to their executive director, so I can, by the end of the January, I can just quickly, I can ask
That
them
would
that,
be
so if
good.
that,
Yeah, because we need to watch out for that.
And this is the second time this exact issue has come up in both for the same place, that
Right.
burning spear guy. It was the same thing. It's like, does this sound like it's good for a community? That was like the first thing I ever sat in on. So I was uncertain, like, well, can you object to that? And then I was just thinking, what if there were some community people here, the public, objected to it? Would we be receptive to their objections?
well, I think if we have doubts about a project, we can certainly pull the brakes on it and ask these questions before we issue an
Do
approval.
a continuation.
Yeah, and that's, it is definitely something we can do, and I think that we need to employ that more frequently, not to slow something down, but to make sure we're covering all our bases. Because I think the big question we have here is we don't know what we can do to influence something like that, if we can even do anything. I think all these issues are valid, but what are our options to address them, and can we even address them?
Certainly, if the answer was, oh, these are all adult entertainment, suddenly we have coverage in the zoning ordinance.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't have been allowed downtown. The movie theater, which would show R-rated movies, I imagine, I don't even know what that means anymore. Back in school, they called them condemned, but I went to Catholic school. So,
No, I think they were calling you condemned.
but, the absolute, totally adult style, violence and nudity and what have you, is acceptable in a movie theater because we trust that those people are monitoring their audience. But there's got to be something that forces them to monitor the audience. So that's why I think there
Have some
probably is some kind of, and I don't know how it works,
And that's
So I'll
probably-
ask Steve about that tomorrow. That's an excellent
Probably when
question.
he didn't have an age, we should have put that on there
This
as
is,
a condition because of the fact that, he could say 8,
Right.
10,
Yeah.
12.
And players who are bringing children in who aren't playing,
Right,
but are accompanying
yeah, and I don't,
of age players.
And it may very well be that he's going to morph it into a Saturday matinee for G-rated stuff.
Yeah.
There's probably an audience there.
all right.
I kind of got the sense from the gentleman that, this is kind of a new concept to him too, so he hasn't really explored all the things, and, that happens with new stuff. I mean,
has anyone done that? From what I hear, you're just like, where you have a video thing and you control a machine gun. From what I hear, you're actually in the
Right,
thing
right.
with the
Little
machine
goggle
gun.
thing, and
And you're playing virtually with other people who
Yep,
are doing the
yep.
same thing at the same time in other places.
We
Right,
had,
and that was the question that I asked about linked games. We all heard about the, online role-playing games, right?
Yeah.
I don't think this is quite to that level, and, it's probably
we had,
Tour of Duty or whatever, the other
Call of Duty.
games that you may have heard of.
we had visual, practical training
In the military.
in the military, and
That's probably where
we
this
were
got
17
developed.
years old. 17 to 30. And they were playing shoot 'em and kill 'em.
As
So,
a training exercise.
Right,
Well, that's-
they were
that was
getting you guys
training.
ready.
but they were 17 years old.
Right.
Yep.
And it has become an extrapolation, I think, from that into the civilian community.
Mhm.
So you see the violence, and you play the role, and you combat. It's a very dangerous.
It's for entertainment, for fun.
I think this is a good discussion. I think that, but if we get some more idea from the police, and I'll ask the Lakes Region Planning Commission, I'll probably have an answer for that by the end of January from them. So
Okay.
if I don't email them beforehand, but I think this is a really good discussion to sort of analyze how
Well-
we've approached.
I'm sorry I didn't throw it in sooner, but
Well,
I didn't
think it
know,
was-
I didn't know.
It was absolutely
Probably
an
all thought
appropriate
about it,
question,
nobody said
absolutely appropriate. But I think we have to view it through the lens of the effect on the community, not on the individual.
Right.
That's the only difference.
And tangentially, I was in the same position when I started asking about the yogurt business, because all of a sudden we're dealing with food.
Yeah.
I don't know if that changes, and that's why I threw it out there. I figured maybe someone like you would know more about
So
it.
funny asking questions.
But is that something that we have, I mean, are we concerned if does the planning board have some input if it involves food, or is that total state and it has nothing to do
Well,
with
they
us?
have to have, they're required to have permits. and
There's
that's what
plenty of
I
oversight
was
food-wise.
asking. I mean, if you're serving food, I mean, even we do spaghetti dinners as fundraisers. And, the health department, we have requirements that we have to meet for the food that's being prepared. And they can shut you down.
Yep.
They can come in and check you, and they can shut you down for not having, proper cleanliness or food temperature.
So the planning board gives approval, but it's contingent upon the governing entities,
Correct.
Exactly.
And we
which
can
we don't know if we have in the case of the
Yeah.
VR.
And we can't, we can start saying that in all of our, there's always sort of been, that's boilerplate, so pending any local, state, and federal permits required for this business. So we can start saying that with every approval, and
Yeah.
maybe we should, just to acknowledge
Yeah.
that,
Yep.
that, we call it boilerplate
Yeah,
usually,
and
but
it's boilerplate because it's on the NOD.
okay. So,
It's always, if there's conditions,
And you
maybe
cover.
it's-
they
any-
always
you
precede
cover
that,
any
but there's
of them.
always the thing saying, contingent on building permit and any state, local, or federal permits needed for the project.
maybe as a board, we can just start saying that, and that will help us remember that those are those things where those things are covered, so,
And,
I
and,
don't think it
and,
hurts.
in his case, we probably should have put, obtained the health permit
Yeah.
for that
Yeah.
as a condition also.
Yep.
Those
I
two
think he
items.
probably has to do that anyway, doesn't he?
Yeah, he
Well,
definitely.
Well, he does, but if we don't require it, I'm sure.
No, it's still required.
Who would,
Right, it's
well, Tommy and them. as
Well,
the health-
generally during my inspections,
Okay,
one of the last things is, are you ready for food and bev, or have you contacted food and bev?
so
if there's any-
he would have to have a health permit.
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay,
He
all
should be
right.
working on it right now.
Right.
Yeah,
Well,
okay.
he's still building it out.
Right.
And if we want if we
When
want
we
to
start
help
the
business
process.
people and start, especially a new guy that's starting a business, it's good to remind them that they need, just to, I mean, and that maybe is a no-brainer, but who knows whether it's a little yogurt thing.
And,
I
and
don't-
I'm sure you probably, when they brought it to you, do you guys talk to them about what they need? Well, you have the checklist, so,
Well, my my stuff doesn't appear on the planning board checklist, I mean, because I've been looking at a little bit different things. But generally, just in conversation, if it's a food service place, and I'm going through, and they're looking for a final, I'll ask them if they have the food and beverage, how far along are they
Yeah,
on the
on the
paperwork? Because
permit,
oftentimes, they're waiting for the C of O from me to process the rest of it through. And they're pretty scrutinous, the food and beverage people.
Oh, yeah.
But this is kind of the thing, we have to rely on those with the actual power to do stuff, to do what they do. And hopefully, and if it came to it, and they have the certificate of occupancy, and they didn't have that license, I think I'd be well within my powers to say, well, you can't open until you show it to me. If it's an issue, if there's, if they, if at the end of the day they said,
Deputy Chief
what food
Health
and beverage, that'd be a huge red flag for me. But they operate, they don't always check back, they will check with me if they have questions, but they'll never say, I went to so-and-so's and they're good to go. But the next time I'm at the restaurant, I'll say, show me the sticker you got from the state, and it's usually posted right there.
Maybe that's something we need to look at. We say they're required to have these permits, are they getting them? Are they, if they're in the process of getting them, do we see that they actually got them?
The punishment is swift from them.
Yeah.
It's,
But
it's a summons immediately.
Yeah, the punishment's swift, but, I think there's also due diligence,
Yeah.
because if one person gets hurt, then, it kind of, I think in some ways, opens up a liability to the town. I'm not sure on that.
I would disagree.
Yeah.
I'm not sure either, but I would
Right.
disagree. Only because we don't have the enforceable powers
yeah.
that they do.
Yeah.
So
That's-
if we did have a food and beverage, then we would be on the hook for any mistakes they make.
If we
But
had
since
to
it's a
issue
state, yeah,
We would be liable.
correct.
Where another.
We're not certifying
another
any part
agency
of
is
of the food service other than that there's air gaps around the drains and, things that-
Yeah.
which are in the building code
Yeah.
for that.
So I think it's good for us because there's a lot of stuff that happens beyond the planning board that we just don't see those bits and pieces. We could certainly think about, as we edit and work on our site plan review, to even have a section where like, what other state and local, federal permits do you need? And just include that, so we're sort of aware of what other things they've got
Part of
going
the
on.
checklist.
So that's just something to consider. The other thing, again, is just making sure that we verbally say, conditions for this are, any state, federal, local permits that are required to operate such a business.
And then I think if anyone has any questions, then we should put that as a
Yeah.
condition.
Yeah.
Whether it's something big or just something, like you say, with the age thing was very important, and where it was very vague, we should have caught that.
But then you think about the sort of change of use, or if, say, this place opens, closes down. I'm just thinking about the food service permit, and then another virtual reality froyo place wants to go in. So they don't actually need to go through the whole change of use. They won't come before us, but they still need those same permits to
Correct.
operate. So, effectively, they're just under the previous site plan review.
Yes, because the use in that location has been approved for the same thing.
Yeah.
But you're right, and we wouldn't know offhand if they attain them until they get shut down.
Right.
That'd probably be the first time we heard about it. Because if they didn't get a building permit for it, they would have no contact with town hall at all, even through the planning board or zoning or even my office. So-
Maybe a sign, though. That might be the only
Yes, exactly.
trigger, so, yeah.
One other thing that also came up that I think it's important, and I don't know about, Frank brought it up, was parking. Is that, like employee parking, for instance, is that something, is that just, well, that's their problem? Or is that something that we need to ask about to make sure they have that covered?
Well, we do in every other zone except for the village commercial. So the village commercial has no parking requirements for those businesses. So per zoning ordinance, I think it's a valid question. It's good to add, and then because, parking for employees is really difficult in the downtown area.
But we couldn't say, no, you can't open until you get employee
Well,
parking.
yeah, our zoning ordinance doesn't say that he has
Right.
to have any parking
Yeah.
requirements, so. yeah.
But they are limited, if the employee comes in and parks on the street out there, I mean, he can be limited to he may have to move 2 or 3 times.
Yeah.
Leaving the 12-year-olds
Productivity.
alone.
Yeah. This is great, though. I think it's good to sort of talk through some of the stuff we've seen. I think this is important.
Yeah, because, social impacts are definitely in your wheelhouse.
Yeah.
Um, And, there's no fault for not having the imagination to ask the correct question either.
Right, and our job isn't to know everything, it's to
Right.
try and I think in a lot of ways it's better that we don't know everything. Because then it forces us to look at things in a different way and ask the right people instead of just assuming we know how this should be, so. But I think we can get some answers and then we can apply it to the next. Yeah,
Well, I think there's never a stupid question.
I agree. Yeah.
And everybody, I mean, we should feel comfortable. I mean, 3 of us might know it, or we think we know it, and then we get the answer and I didn't even know. So, that was with all my employees. I told them there's never a stupid question. A stupid decision, maybe. Not a stupid question, so.
Yeah,
The only stupid question's the one not asked.
yeah.
Exactly.
Are we good with this discussion?
Thank you.
There was discussion. One other thing, Brian, since you brought up the police review, I wanted to bring this up with the planner notes that we get.
Okay.
And I'm wondering if we can get it's helpful for me to know, because I know you send it out to various department chairs or department heads within the town. I wonder if we can just get a table in there that's it was sent to this and there was no response.
Sure.
And just.
But it's also discretionary, I have to
that's-
say.
And that's fine. It's nice to know that it did get sent, so we don't have to then ask later.
If it depends on the nature of it, obviously, new stuff, always highway,
Yeah.
always fire, always PD.
But this most recent one, you wouldn't send the virtual reality thing to highway because
Right.
there's, but it'd be just nice to know that, the police chief reviewed this or not. I trust your discretion, but it's nice to know which got reviewed. I
Yes.
don't know.
Well, if we had a little checklist that had
Yeah,
all of them
yeah,
on there,
yeah.
and then you could say,
Yeah, sent, not sent.
none of them were
Yeah,
checked
yeah.
off, you ask
Yeah.
the question.
Right, and then we can then determine, I don't know, it'd just be helpful for me to see, for example, when we had because often the town engineer reports come in super late and
Yes.
last minute. So if in reviewing the application materials last time, we say, oh, it got sent, we have not gotten a response yet. And I think that helps us triggers in my mind, questions okay, we need to see this for, say, the Market Basket development.
Well, that was
Yeah.
like the NAs here, and,
Yeah.
Right.
we got it, and we go through it.
Yeah,
Okay, yeah, I can definitely.
because I know you're doing that stuff, we just don't. if
Yeah,
we-
I don't think you all need to see a copy of a no comment page.
Oh, no, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree, and that's what I'm trying to
So,
just say, that there is no.
Yeah, but you're right, like a block, who's been notified and
Yeah,
why.
yeah.
Or, any comments, if there are, then you would get the comment. But not necessarily, the whole raft of
Yeah.
no comment pages that, because a lot of times that, even if they have nothing to say, it doesn't mean that there's not something that can be said. But more often than not, they take it on the fact that, does this affect my department or not?
Right.
So,
But no, I think it'd be helpful for me, so if
Okay,
it's not
can do.
too much extra work for you. And then can you review the minutes or the video from the last 10 meetings? No, just kidding.
I got an app for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure. 2 or 3. Oh, wait a minute, I gotta go back.
Well, anything that I can do to make you guys' jobs easier, that's
Yeah.
why I'm here. So, and to keep you in line,
Yeah.
so.
Us?
It's a tough job.
Yeah, good luck with that.
Look at us. How could we get in trouble?
Just by
Existing.
Jack's comment, for example, that, the only reason I brought that up, and like I said, it really troubled me to do it, was of the straw poll that was taken at a town meeting concerning a project before the board. And the people who answered at all had to step away from the planning board. They
Oh,
were
yeah.
seen as
Or they
being
were asked
prejudiced.
to.
So with that in mind, I just thought it was
No, I
appropriate.
thought
to
that
bring
was
up
important,
here.
and so apologies for silencing your vote, but, yeah.
I, on the other hand, can speak as the public anytime I want.
Yeah. Careful there.
Glitter.
Any other comments? Before I close out the meeting, it's,
Can
Come
I
on,
just say
Frank.
something, Rebecca, for, just next meeting, can, the Conservation Commission have 5 minutes just to fill you in on what they're doing? I don't have to do, in fact, I don't want to do it tonight, but.
yes, and I was supposed to ask for those comments.
You know,
Let's,
we, at the selectmen's meeting, we have committee reports if anybody's on there.
yeah.
And that's something,
I talked about doing, I said,
Yeah, that's
we were gonna
what
do
I
this
did.
at work
Yeah,
sessions,
yeah.
so, I will try my best to remember at work sessions to ask. So, yes, and if I forget, please remind me.
Okay.
How about adding that to the agenda template,
Sure.
committee reports, whatever you want to
Just to work
call it?
sessions, I think,
Just
monthly.
as a
that's what we do
reminder.
on
Yeah.
the select
Yeah.
board. We have items that chairman's
Yeah.
comments, stuff like that.
That'd be great, thank you for the
And you
reminder.
only want to see that at the work session, then?
I think monthly is sufficient. I would hope that anyone who is on a different board and there's something pressing, to please bring it up at any time, so.
Zoning,
Do you have something to say?
I don't have anything to
Okay.
say.
Yeah. I'd
keep
not
canceling
forgotten
your
about
meetings.
that. I've been eyeballing you over there, just trying to include the 3 of you that I know are on other boards, so. Frank, it seems like our public would like to speak.
I would like to see, and we're talking about revisions of our zoning ordinances. I support the idea of accepting the definition of wetlands by the state's DES, mainly because in our existing zoning ordinance, we have other agencies that we use regulatory elements of land use, and that is be FEMA, the FAA, and Water Supply and Pollution Control. And these are agencies that govern the use of, and an applicant that would be coming here is obviously trying to comply with an application to the state. So if our zoning ordinance definitions of a particular use or element is in keeping with the agencies of which the person is going to apply, it reduces the technical infeasibilities, as they call them, where you get one agency saying thou shall and the other one says thou shall not. And land use regulatory elements are confusing, conflicting, or frustrating, and irritating, if you haven't noticed. And I think also in our zoning ordinance, we need a page that explains why the intent and purpose of authority having jurisdiction, which may be beyond this board. This board has the authority having jurisdiction at its level. Obviously, we have other agencies that we have to respond to with. And then maybe needs to be something on a page that says, this is why we require this. In other words, if I'm putting up a house, you need to have that water supply and pollution control from the state, and the state will not allow the cities or towns any part of that authority. That's solely held with them. But it's part of the process of getting that. And where a lot of citizens don't understand the technicalities of wetlands, floodplains, floodways, and they get frustrated as to why I can't do this, and it's never flooded there, and I don't see any water, so it's not wetlands. And you are put in a position of trying to run the process of our zoning ordinance and the process of the application. It would help, I believe, if we defer to the authority having jurisdiction for the definition and the intent and purpose. Most all of those regulatory agencies have start off on page 1. The intent and purpose of this regulatory element is, and that saves this board so many emotional heartaches, I think.
And we're ensured this is the proper information because these are the enforcement people.
Correct. So I think that would, I know we've had a lot of issues with the floodway, floodplain discussion and other issues that I've listened to here, not being a party to, but, and you are trying to work through the process. But I believe that using the state DES for the wetlands and acknowledging that we have other agencies having the authority, having jurisdiction, using their definitions, I believe would be in our benefit. And parking in the village commercial zone is restricted to apartments. We do have a parking ordinance for apartments.
So,
I'd like to,
hang on, I just want to say one thing. Sorry, and then please, I just wanted to say thanks for a good year, everyone. And, yeah, it's been a pleasure doing this with you guys, so thank you.
are you done with it?
Yeah.
What do you mean? Why are you saying that? It's like you're leaving. I was,
No. It's the end of the year. This is
Oh,
our
yeah.
last meeting
Yes.
of the year, so I just wanted to say thank you.
Yeah, I think it's important that we have a planning board that stays together for a while, so it's not a bunch of new people, because I think all that discussion we had tonight, you know, now we know that stuff. And, you know, I think one of the problems with these volunteer boards, they get turned over so quickly that a lot of times you have, you know, it's a struggle, so.
Well, you look, I mean.
So you want to make a term into a sentence.
It's a long
Yeah.
learning curve.
It is.
It is a long learning curve.
Well, it is, and
I think
that's,
we could use another alternate. We have a full board, and we've had a full board for a little while, but getting another alternate or two might be helpful in getting somebody up to speed on this process, so.
exactly, because I know when Mike Ahern and I were on it, I mean, we had 5, 6, 7 years, and, you know, some of the other people brought us along. You know, we had people that had been here 7 or 8 years, so we could get information from them. But when you,
Yeah.
and that's why, you know, like I say, people need to be in it for the long haul.
The institutional memory is key.
I think there's a balance, and I think it's bringing some fresh ideas and some not knowing what you're doing. I think it gets everyone to ask those important questions too. So I agree, it's nice to have a balance. So that's why I would like to see at least another alternate or two that comes into place here, so we can start.
And
you know.
the prime mover of turnover in the board is people moving out of town.
Yep.
You know, and which may or may not happen, or they just, you know, are done. But that's usually after a long term anyway. But, you know, at one point, we saw a lot of people come and go. And that was because, you know, like Steve moved and Gene moved and, you know,
Yep.
things like that. So, you know, you really can't guard against it, you know, other than making a sentence instead of a term. But, you know, it touches people's motivations and things like that too. So,
That
yes,
wasn't
we
me
encourage you to
issuing a-
stay and learn.
Yeah. I sat in fear the first year and a half that I was on this board, just like, what am I doing? So,
Well, I think we were all there.
yep. So, but yeah, that wasn't a vague retirement notice.
Well, as a new member, I would just like to say that you all made me feel pretty comfortable.
Good.
You know, it took a little while, but you were all very good as far as making me feel welcome. That has a lot to do with keeping people around.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think, it's a pretty valuable board if we can all have different opinions and still come to an agreement most of the time, but we don't have to, but that's what we're here to have these discussions and have differing opinions and.
And, you know, what's best for the community and not ourselves or how we, you know, but we can be individuals and express our opinion.
That's been the history that I've experienced with this board over 7 years.
Yep.
Model of civility.
This is great. Before we all start holding hands and singing. Which would be wonderful, too.
I would also like to say that I thought that we had a very good year here, Madam Chair, and it was a real pleasure serving you folks.
And we got that stinking master plan done.
Yes.
It was a lot of work, I'll tell you.
People don't realize how much goes into that. I mean, that was what, almost 4.5, 5 years?
We signed the document the agreement with North Country Council, I think, the first meeting, so it was good 4.5 years.
Just to delay the meeting a little bit longer.
Please.
I'd like you all to think about how much value we got from the way we approached the master plan. Where, a giant rewrite, or do you think that, 5 years from now, when you're all still here, you might want to look at it as tweaking what was in there? I was late to the party, so I didn't really see a lot of the stuff. I mean, it was mostly hammered out by the time I got here, and it looked fairly simple to me because it was all presented in that manner. But I'm wondering if conditions actually dictate a complete rewrite. The purpose should be the same generally going forward. Like I said, a few tweaks here and there. How things get on the list or get pulled away from the list of actions. Hopefully the next time we go to look at it, a lot of the things that were action items on the list will have been taken care of. New ones are always going to pop up to take their place. But that's something that I think is identified at this level, or perhaps, I'm not sure how much real value there was in the poll. I looked at some of the results and they were kind of scattered, in a lot of ways. And the other thing is, we always have to look to the budget. And if you guys think that it was worth every penny to have somebody do the work for us, then, so be it. If you think that the board should be getting their hands a little bit more dirty on this, well, that would be a good thing too. That was just an observation that I made.
I think we kind of had I don't know if the best of both worlds, or maybe the worst of both worlds, but where we we were being ushered through it, and I don't feel like I had that much involvement in it until Sharon was no longer here, and then North Country Council sort of faded out.
At the
and
end
then
of the
we started
contract.
doing it on our own.
Right.
And I think at that point, it became ours so much more.
Right.
However, I think having guidance is helpful, but how much guidance? So, I mean, that's just my opinion, that I think that we came up with a better plan because we were all working on it and we were way more involved and we know it's in it way more than we would have had we continued with, especially North Country Council.
And the examples that Steve brought in, for example, or, you looked at other towns, and it's a 3-page document.
Yeah.
So, I'm not advocating that light an approach, but I'm just wondering if going full bore with the glossy publication, and that's cheap part of it, but you know what I'm saying, that really getting into the weeds, and maybe it helped you when it was turned back to you to have all that behind you. Or by the time that the next rewrite comes around, or the next edition, you guys, having been in the weeds with it for the last 5 years, might say, it's working pretty good, we'd just like to change this here, and it may shorten the process of getting a new one.
I know the input I provided was for a 10-year plan. So short of addendums, as things change,
Right.
there shouldn't be a rewrite.
It was just a thought, and since we were kind of tossing
No, I think it's
stuff
good, and
around.
I think the idea is we'll be going through this on a monthly basis and coming up with ideas.
And you may very well uncover shortcomings as you go through it, too,
Yeah. I'm not prepared to talk about rewriting it, though. That makes me terrified.
Too soon.
Still a little too
This is
fresh.
planning. You gotta plan for this.
Consider yourself disciplined about bringing that up.
But I think
Yeah,
that's
thank
something
you.
that we should always be talking about, you know, the sort of wish list for the next like
Yes.
what works and what didn't, and, but I think trying to get more board buy-in in the process is something that lacked a little bit when we were working with North Country Council. So I think and it's tough, we all have commitments elsewhere, but
Right.
trying to get more, I mean, I couldn't handle doing it again, because it took a lot of time, so.
Yeah, and you want to keep all the board members here, so the worst thing you could do is
Threaten
do
them
that
with
over
the master plan.
My term's up in April.
Are you saying adios?
So I'd like to move that we adjourn.
Second.
I gotta get
All right, all those in favor of,
Aye.
all right, have a good holiday season.
Thank you.
everyone.
Merry
Very
Christmas.
cool.